Okay, so I would like to welcome you to this fourth appointment on the 5-Speed Talk we have organized inside the MIA workshop of the AUIC School of Politecnico di Milano. I'm really glad to present the José María Sánchez García, who is a professor at ETSAM in Madrid. But his academical experience is broader, including experiences as a visiting professor in Switzerland, in Mendrisio and in Zurich, and in Italy, such as in UAV in Venice. He has also an intense professional activity, and in 2006, José María Sánchez García funded his studio, currently based in Madrid and in Switzerland, where he develops public projects, won in architectural competition. It has received national and international prizes, such as the first prize, BSI Swiss Architectural Award, the Architectural Records Design Vanguard Award in New York, and the first prize, Ibero-American Biennale of Architecture and Urbanism. This double professional vocation brings José María Sánchez García to the definition of an interesting impossibility in defining the boundaries between the theoretical research, the didactic experience, and in the working activity. His interests are mainly focused on the territory, with project based on the deep understanding of the system of the territory, also considering the project as a layer of the complex historical system of the territory itself. So I give the floor to the professor and see you at the end of this lecture with the 10 or 15 minutes maybe available for any possible question or consideration you have in the meantime. So the floor, Professor, is totally yours. I think you can, if you would, share your screen.
Thank you very much, Elena.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Right, let me see. Thank you very much, Elena, for your kind presentation, and thank you very much, of course, to Politecnico di Milano for this beautiful experience. No, lucky, we would like, I suppose, to all the rest of my colleagues or the visiting professor to be right now in Milano and to be sharing those days with all of you, and of course even to share the experience through the rest of the professors, because I think one of the more beautiful opportunities that give you this kind of workshops is well, to share time. No? So it's the way that we usually I think learned more, no, in that way. Anyway, we right now are living this complex time and complex situation that we already know, and I mean, of course, we are trying to do as good as we manage, and well, this is the situation, and I think we should focus it in a positive way and look into the future. No? So I will try to pass by our work. Wait a second, if I manage to share the screen. And I would like, wait, let me see, where are we? Wait, maybe it's better like this. Yes. Okay. I would like, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Great.
Perfectly.
Okay, I would like to try to explain this interest that I think almost all, I suppose, all the professors here today in the workshop we share. No, this is this idea of almost don't find the real boundaries between our practice, let's say, the work like professor, the more teaching and let's say the time we have to research. No? In my opinion, both three situations are quite close to each other in the way we understand our practice. And I really think, and this is my first advice, no, that you should start to understand architecture like this. No, I believe that very much also in the I don't know how you say in English, but the kind of I want to believe very much in the person itself, no? And I believe very much that each one of us are completely different. Well, no, I'm not saying the same, absolutely not the same. And I also want to believe that architecture should be focused from our personal experience, from our personal way of understanding the world, no? So I think we need to find our researching lines. We need to find our interests as soon as possible, because like that you can develop like a person and like an architect. Like that you can manage to answer a project in a short time or in a longer time. You can manage to, I don't know, to make a competition, and where even if you don't win it, usually happen like that. You are working in the right direction, because somehow each small step, each small stage, let's say, is somehow giving an input to the rest of your global interests. No? That is what I will try to explain, which are my interests. No? I will try to explain through our work, through these 4 projects that maybe some of them you already know, but I will try not too much to talk to the project itself, but to my interest and how during this last, I don't know, right now, maybe 15 years, no, I've been trying to find an answer, no, in different situations, but always somehow, from my point of view, from the common ground. No? I will try to explain. I choose 4 projects, all of them have to be very much with territories. I call the lecture singular territories, but very diverse areas, no? Like an important places in terms of heritage, like this Roman temple in Merida, or the castle the castle of Castillo de la Luna in Albuquerque, Spain, Extremadura, both of them, where I was born, and also another kind of buildings that have another language, another even way of construction, another construction that have to be with a small factory and with this sport center called the Ring. No? 4 situations, 4 different programs, let's say but in my opinion, more or less the same way of approaching the project. No? Let's start maybe with the more important project we developed, at least a project that allows me to start with my own small office, no? And it was this competition one time ago where we found this situation, no? in the beginning of the competition itself. No? There was a space that had been quite damaged, like you can see, a part of the city of Merida, center of Merida, a very important city in Roman time, like maybe you already know. And somehow it appeared this situation of, not any order at all, with the backside of houses that during time the municipality had been trying to get, you know, in order to give a new order and a new space to this the rest of the Roman temple. Like we can understand, and it's something we've been talking to Ma about it during those days, in these days in the workshop, no, live, and even I heard also the professors talking about it in the lecture. On the architecture is done through layers, no, so layers after layers, and I think nobody more than the Italian architects can understand that the history is like this, and that we are part of the history for a short time, and maybe we need to deal with those ancient layers and to answer in the proper way, as good as we can, with a new layer. No? Like you can see in this picture, we keep alive, let's say, the Roman temple, because in such a moment it appeared this small construction inside of the old structure, no? That is a small Renaissance palace, no? That well, somehow is still there, and I think we should deal with this idea of layers and overlapping layers. No? I think it's very important, this diagram. This well, here you see in the upper part of the image, which was the old traces, the old guidelines of the Roman city. No? You can see the Roman temple of Diana. It was located in the central space of the forum, main forum of the city itself. It have a kind of void around. For us, it was very important void. No? Like you will see, I will talk very often about infrastructural condition. I will talk about void. I will talk about importance of the space. And I will talk about geometry. I would order. Those are my our common ground in the office and my own interest, if I should say myself. No? If I should explain myself. Well, here you can see in the second image the combination of what is the nowadays the real situation of the city of María, a very compact city, like you can see, and the old traces. Even still, there are some streets that are really the same ones from Roman period. But when you go closer to the Roman temple, that have been disappearing. And of course, the void was not anymore. Our idea with the project was exactly that. Let's try not so much to build a building around the Roman temple. That was maybe the question of the competition, but to generate a new order, to create a new geometry to it that will allow us to create or to more or less create or recharge the void that time ago the Roman temple had, and the void that really the city of Maria needs right now to give to create a public space. In the end, we mix two structures, two ideas. This more irregular border that we already had there, that we try to, well, let's say to discussing with the neighbors and with different situations, we manage more or less a kind of very irregular order. And afterward, also this other order that it was coming more or less from the old construction, the old void that it was there. No? For me, the more interesting point with the project is when we mix, we link it both orders, the more azarosos, chaotic one, and the more logical, regular one, and all those together become this new layer to the city. No? Here we recognize the theater, amphitheater, no? And of course this area we have the Roman theater of Rafael Moneo, no? A masterpiece of architecture, Spanish architecture. But I mean, I was interested to live, to really recuperate the void as much as possible. As such a compact city like this really need a space that it would be something in between archaeological space and at the same time a kind of public space. No? Well, this is an image taken directly from Google Earth. No? You understand more or less this condition I was trying to explain. No? We wanted to almost add a very neutral structure that will dialogue, will create a transition. It's like a kind of background, will create an order in between both systems, no? The city of Maria and the Roman temple. For us, it was important to understand that this was a public space, but at the same time an archaeological site. We wanted to raise all the fences we had in the beginning of the competition, all this, different levels that was adding during the history of Merida. We wanted to really understand this void and answering like this. No? So even we managed in the end to try to keep this atmosphere of the archaeological site, but at the same time a public place. No? This was also a mix of uses important for us. And well, in this drawing, I think you can understand, more or less what I'm explaining. No? I'm not going to talk too much about the plan section, more about the strategies, okay? Because we are asking to the students in a group all the time about which is your strategy, how is the system, what's the kind of, and I will try to talk about more in this way. But plans, you can study them. They were very basic. We were working again with both the structures, the one coming from the archaeological studies and more, let's say, from this archaeological void that we would like very much to talk. And then these interstitial spaces that was giving us the choice and the opportunity the chance to recover the area. Section, we managed with this kind of a structural air that was creating a background, but not so much with the intention of hiding, the city, but with the intention to add a new geometrical order to the site. Here is a construction section where everything was structural. It was made in concrete with walls of 50 centimeters. This situation. Somehow it was a system, and then we were adapting it to the condition. Of course, when you work, that is something also important to know. When you work with an archaeological site, it's not easy to know the final result, the final shape. You can manage to have, let's say, a strategy and even a system, but the system needs to have the flexibility to adapt to the conditions and to the different situations that will appear. Like I said, this new element was again giving an order to the site, catching again the archaeological void, and not so much hiding this. The city itself, that it was not very interesting, but it was not our goal. That it was not we were not allowed to change the people's houses or life. Somehow we were more or less creating a dialogue between the two situations. Even here there was a street. We managed to change the rules of the municipality, so they allowed us to our buildings should not answer to the nowadays traces, should answer to the ancient old traces. So in this case, we decide to don't follow with the street to create a square. Of course, the street is still there, but you cross through our building, and this kind of idea. Even we were not touching the walls of the housing behind. It was not our commission. Commission was to create this older infrastructure, small structures that will allow to give a new choice to the place. I like also this idea that architecture changed in time. I think for me it was very surprised because it was not. We didn't know in the beginning, but when those two different orders, the more regular one and the more irregular, they appear, it's quite interesting because it appeared this kind of shadows and this idea of light and shadows that is changing during the day, depending, of course, of the moment of the year. But I think it's interesting that the new layer we add to the territories need also to have this flexibility that the life, of course, can go on. This is full sometimes of you do market in Saturdays, in weekend. Right now, it's even the place where the young people from Merida meet because it's like the more, a singular place. How the structure itself is a kind of background of life. I'm not carrying here images of it, but the background of life, and I think also it's interesting that it should be like this. Architecture is, of course, done to the people, by the people, but to the people. So here we create this big shadow in all the perimeter area. From us, I think this idea that to keep the void allows us, we manage in the end to don't add any function in the ground floor, just the shadow, just this square, this archaeological site, and all the functions are located in the first floor, with the entrance in the ends of the building. But the big shadow is important. I believe that at least in Spain, I suppose part of the Mediterranean countries, we need shadow to create public space. The shadow is really fundamental. Well, here you have the view of the street, how we were dealing with the persistent. Okay. Then we change completely the place. This new project is talking about a small electrical assembly industry. This is not a public commission from competition. This was a private one. It was during the crisis time, and I'm working in my own town. So understand, this is a small town in Extremadura called Don Benito, where I was born. And it was somehow kind of friends were asking, oh, why don't you do? I say, I'm not so sure, but well, why not a small industry for a family? No? This is the territory where I come from. And it's important to understand it. I like very much that you know where I come from, because you see a very compact urban center, very clear, small town, not very special, not, well, I think with a good balance between this idea, no, of this morning Professor Ferrari was saying about this idea of course, infrastructural condition, but domesticity or the condition as well. No? I think, well, this is a small town. Well, you can see that in the surrounding, it's an agricultural area, absolutely, and with the river Guadiana crossing through. But I like very much to see and to read. I think when you fly, you should choose always window. Maybe it's more uncomfortable, but you are able to understand the territory in different way. You see those lines and you can start to analyze them in the same way that we have been analyzing the persistent lines that we already found in the site itself. No? But here it was more or less the situation, and of course, this is like whatever industrial area, very bad organized, not very interesting in terms of architecture. So afterwards, we understood that usually, and you have on the left side, the common typology of this kind of small industry was like an isolated building, usually made by metal structure and very prefabricated elements, and a kind of open area, to keep things and to move. So we say, okay, why not we change a little this situation? Instead of that, maybe we can work with the boundaries, we can work around it, and instead of having all your patio, the courtyard outside, you have it inside of your own building. So this was not very interesting in terms of architecture, in terms of composition with the client, of course. But they suddenly said, okay, it's a good idea, because for us it's important that we can prepare our trucks. The lorries are ready in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and they can go to the different places in the morning. And we have our things there. Nobody see them. Well, maybe it's a good idea. Well, after that, we decided to work with this concept, and we took this strategy, this system in the end. Said, okay, let's work with this perimeter. We need, of course, to answer a complex program, a small program, but with different situations. And more or less, we did like this. I will explain you why. It's very clear in plan. For us, if in the Roman temple, it was so important to understand the old traces, the old order of the Roman city, the ancient order. It was important because we were answering to the ancient order more than to the nowadays city. Here, it was important to understand the movement in the small industry itself, even the movement of the trucks, the lorries, So we understood that the way and the dimension you need for a big truck to move and to do it in a proper way, it was 30 meters. With 27 meters more or less, you could move quite right. Then also so we decided, okay, let's prepare a void of 30 meters for 30 meters, and that is okay. So like that, we can organize all the rest of the industry. Then we decided, okay, let's take another square of 45 meters. But of course, you have different programs and different necessities. It depends on the area. So the more interesting decision for us, it was the diagonal, this movement that appeared between the displacement of the two squares. So in this way, we move a little one square from the other, and we create a wideness, I think you say like that, of 6 meters wide areas for the more domestic areas, like the office, a small room for meetings, so on. And then another of 9 meters wide space to the industry where they work with things, where they keep the materials. So this is an industry with these metallic elements of electrical assemblies for helping to the construction in different buildings, so on, and industrial elements. Okay. Then we leave around the building itself another kind of interstitial space that it was also useful to arrive to do it. So in the end, somehow the plan, after talking quite much with the client itself, become this, no? With the 3, let's say, the areas with the toilet, the dressing room, so like that, and then just a space in between, no? Okay, and then of course for us it's also quite important to read the site, to read the territory in terms of atmosphere, or in terms of identity, I think is the right word. No? How we can create a place that is that place, and that when you pass by it, you just remember like this, and it's just that. No? I think it's also beautiful, no? When you are, every person is special, and we are like we are. No? Of course, we can take one dress one day, or another kind of dressing, or we go to snow and you put glasses, but in the end you are, no? I think it's also important, no? When we create a place, we need to understand, or we need to think in which is how it's going to be this place, no? So for us, it's very important, this idea, you say in English, intensify quite much the materiality of the place. Try to understand, to study carefully what are we doing, and afterwards to take a decision. For example, in the Roman temple we already saw, we were working with a concrete, just concrete, and with white cement, without any pigment, any other extra color. So we got this kind of whiteness. We took even the sand from the same from the quarter, from the place where the Romans were working with the stones to somehow. So we try to look for that. Here instead we decide to take, we have a very low budget, just this industrial steel element, but without any painting, anything, just the material itself. So it changed during time, it takes brights, the brightness of the morning, like this picture, no? And of course, we use the same material in all the projects. Even when we have to create big windows, we use the same material, no? But we just made some holes on it, and we move it a little from the facade, creating this kind of brise-soleil element, but following the same condition, the same materiality, no? Well, this is like a small joke we were doing in the office to try that the tracks were working, no? And I think it's good because you take the scale of the place, no? Very basic construction done by very small decisions, and then afterwards applying the same decisions to all the projects. So in the same way you had the facade in the interior courtyard, no? Where you can move with the tracks, and you have even the marks of tracks on the wheels on the ground floor, no? But we are working with the same materiality. No? And even in the interior, it happened the same. So I like this picture because it's somehow a kind of construction section. It's like a section itself, where you see the same material outside, inside, in the courtyard, in windows. It's not that we just decide that and we have to do it. No, of course not. Of course, there are another approaches. But for us, it's important that through the construction of the building and the materiality of it, we try to create a proper, an atmosphere, no, for it, no. Well, I didn't explain, but I don't want to explain so much the buildings. But here in section, we decide that they needed high areas and mainly, no. But we decide that the programs are changing in section because it's changing in the corners of section, in this kind of a sketch of swastika scheme that is allowing you to have cross ventilation and light coming from the corners, no, somehow. So we decide to work like this. So, and also this idea, no, that almost so everything is the same, but there are a small difference, no, depending of of course, the necessities of the client itself, no? well, this is a small detail that I think was something very basic, but there's this idea, no, that in the end the project is a kind of container with so many doors, no, and the doors have different dimensions or different conditions even. And we decide this idea of displacement, the facade, creating well, this kind of details. No? This was what I was explaining, no? How different programs change somehow through the section itself that is allowing us from the outside the space from the courtyard having more ventilation. And this is a picture from another photographer, just more in use, no? How they start to use the plane. Again, it's a kind of background for the activity, the life, of course, that they are having. No? I believe very much in creating, I mean, that our buildings need to don't only answer the necessities, because of course you are asking to do something because it's a necessity, there are necessities, and you have a program. But I think the program can change in time. No? We have been talking so much also about time, no? And I think if you manage to think not only for the demanded program, but also for a future program, somehow your building will have that flexibility and they could adapt, no? In time. No? Okay, this fourth project, I hope I'm correcting time. Okay, well, I will follow. It's a tourist inn in the Luna Castle. It's a wonderful place, also Albuquerque in Spain. And here it was a rare project because they were asking for something rare. They wanted to implement a kind of 4-star hotel, well, in a place like this. No? So we said, okay, I don't think it's possible to do it like this. Why not to find another place? No? Suddenly we discovered that those walls, you see in the back area, they were not a real walls. There was something made in concrete, and that, well, they didn't have importance in terms of, well, yes, in terms of memory, but not so much in terms of, let's say, heritage. You know? So we decided, okay, let's try to don't work inside of the castle, because the castle, I think, is not possible. It's very difficult to adapt a castle for the necessities of a hotel like this. So why not to work in this kind of platform that it was already there? Now we don't need to defend from Portuguese. We have a good relationship with them. So let's try to take away maybe some of the earth that was already there, and maybe we can adapt, no, to the with a new architecture, but adapting it to a old order that it was already there. But in this way, we create a connection with the castle itself. Let's say that you have the feeling you are inside of the castle itself, but you're creating a new building, a new infrastructure that is adapting to already existing order. Like I say, this wall, I mean, I think it was important in terms of memory, but only the main, how you say in English, but the main bastion, it was the one that it was preserved. The rest, like I said, it was made in concrete. Well, it was already there, but it was revealed 20 years before. So this was our strategy. It was a very clear strategy. No, let's try to adapt to this situation. Of course, the idea was not to hide our project, but yes, to adapt it and to don't change the skyline of the castle itself. No? We decide, okay, we have to balance which is the right place where to locate our project. In our opinion, it was more here than not in the castle itself. Here you have some models from this. We were working very close to engineering. You can imagine, well, you don't see very good, but I mean, more or less this was a conceptual project. To understand all this territory where the mountain, it's the rock, and the castle, it was like the same thing, you know, and then the wall that it was there, and then suddenly like a kind of, I don't know, scenery, I don't know, it's like an animal, no, that is using the cave and the space in between, no? Of course, we needed to create a system. We adapted the system, was having different shape depending of how we was dealing with the situation that we had already there. So we create this kind of 2 floors, rooms, areas, restaurants, so on. It was a small hotel, and then a big void in all the space between the rock and the castle and our proposal. No, we made some halls, small halls, following more or less the ones that already exist in the castle, to give a little ventilation and light to rooms. No? And then afterwards, our project had created this new platform, more or less in the same level that it was already there, and with this kind of cut to the rock that that it was allowing to enter the ventilation and light and so on, through this kind of skylight element that was creating a line between the old and the new part of the building. We keep the walls like they were with and we leave it that line. We added a new line, that is the one interior one is a new line, a new limit from the hotel itself, and even some staircases that were already there. We decide to keep them, and also somehow you can cross our project through from the down level to the platform itself for coming to the hotel, to the castle, sorry, through our building. No? So somehow also you create a public space over our building. No? I think also it was important, this situation, this combination between private and public area. Here has some pictures taken not so long ago. This was the point that connect the ground floor also. There are another entrance and here is the entrance to the inn, no? to the albergo, no? The entrance, and you enter to this place. No? It's a very it's a kind of cave, no? But that have a visual connection with the castle and this double space public area, no? With the rooms following the walls. No? In the end, it's infrastructure again. This is from the first floor, some of the rooms. And yeah. Okay. And then for finishing, I would like to explain this other project. No? It's a kind of a sports center located in, this kind of reservoir, artificial lake, no? Called Gabriel y Galán. It's exactly in the north part of Extremadura and limit with Salamanca and very close to Portugal area quite low density, quite not too much inhabitants, and they were looking for this sports center and at the same time related to sports that have to be with nature. No? That was important. It was a public competition, and they also wanted somehow to create a kind of new identity, no, to the place. No? So our approach to the project, I should say also that after winning the competition of Temple of Diana, I had the opportunity I got a scholarship to go to Rome, to the Spanish Academy, to study there about the public space and the void in Roman temple, so on. So during that time, we developed this project. No? So it was something rare because Roman Temple of Diana was a project developed during 6-7 years, and suddenly this project was developed and built in almost 1 year. No? It was something rare. No? So quite many things that are here, and you will see, are coming from the Roman Temple of Diana project that I had in my head logically. I was living, like I explained, in Rome, and of course, and the office was going on in Madrid. I mean, a small office, no? Now I will start in different way. No, I like to explain, almost to pass by those images, no? Very basic images where you can understand the system. No? Of course, the system was a kind of ring made in a very short time. They needed to create an infrastructure for a kind of events that they needed. So we tried to work almost like a kind of art, land art object, a kind of device, no, that we were adding to the place. So almost in a week, a couple of weeks, the structure was ready. No? So it was quite exciting because when you arrived at the place, you understood that the structure itself, of course, was creating this shadow, this perimeter shadow that for us was important to in order to generate an area for public space or for outside work, so on. No? So the decision was the ring. It was important to decide the level of it, no? But then after it, it was, like I said, a system. No? Of course, usually in the middle of the construction, there is a sighting, no, to understand that there is no facade where, no, the trees, no, are so almost the facade of the building, no? So you are creating it's a very easy project. I will pass by now, but you create two levels, no. So, but of course the topography is different. The site changed, no. So this territory, it was almost an island, no, where you decide some kind of levels, and then afterwards the object start to a kind of relationship with the site that is changing very much, no. So after deciding levels, position of this ring, that is a kind of workshop place, no, well, it appeared well, the different relationship with the site. No, I like to explain very much the project from this image during the construction of the project. What is interesting to understand that our approach to the project was not so much the object geometry. We didn't want to create a ring in the beginning. But we approached the project from the beginning from these lines you see. No, they are lines that are the marks of the water. No, this kind of artificial lakes. No, depending on the moment of the year. No, they are in a low level like this or a little higher. No? So those marks were drawing on the like they seem to be like in. Like a kind of these topographical lines that we are used to read architects. No, so for us it was interesting to say, okay, why not to try to look for one more line that will try to go to locate the necessities, the program of the project as close to the bank, as close to the water as possible. And but of course, giving so we can organize. No, if I remember right, there were like 12 different associations, sport association like rowing, sailing. It was also sports related to the mountain. Well, different things, and let's try to create a system where, depending on the necessities of every association, they can choose the position, the orientation, and the and even the dimension of it. No? So in this image, I think you can understand almost everything. This is a final project. No? Right now, the water is on the mountain. We have the first limit, the first lines from the territorial, right on the top of the mountain with the snow. Then you have, of course, this other line between the countryside, no, and the water itself, no. And when you go closer, they appear the lines. I was explaining the marks of the water itself, and then suddenly the new line, a device that I want to read like this and to understand like an element that is giving a new opportunity to this territory. Yeah, of course, this is a big building. It's a building we are talking about more. I mean, a football stadium can be in the middle of it. You know, you are talking about 200 meters diameter. If you walk on the roof, is 730 meters, more than half a kilometer. So it's a big infrastructure. That what is allowing you is that when you are in the site, you're not allowed to see all the building in once, no? Because you just see part of it through the trees and through the topography that is in the place. Only from there you have this situation, no, to understand the project. You can see in this image, on the left hand, you have the shadow because the level, I mean, it's a unique level, of course, but the distance to the ground floor is much bigger. You have 4.5 meters, 5 meters in the more, well, in some points. But then there is also an area in the middle of the of the area where even the level is higher than our building. So we have to adapt it, to more or less to this situation. And of course, a big building like this is senseless, not to walk from it. So you create like a very different departments, the different sport associations where have a space in between, that allows to have a real connection with the countryside. So you cross in diagonal, walking through the nature, or you go to the roof by the different system of staircases and elevators, and you move and then you go down. I mean, of course, it's an element with different buildings inside of it, we could say, no? Because the facade are, more than 600 meters, no? So we needed also a system to build the project, no? So we decided to work with a kind of a steel panel, steel element that 5 meters high and 50 centimeters wide, no? So when we needed a window, we just took it away, one of them, or we needed a space in between two different programs uses, we took away several of them, no? To create this kind of loggia space, no? That in between, no? More or less, you can see it here. We have 7 meters wide in the building, and a very basic construction. It was also a low budget project. We were working in this way. For us, it was important to understand that in the Roman temple of Diana, we were working with a massive materiality, with something that should deal with the Roman temple. Here, it was the opposite. We wanted to create something that it would be almost a device. It's like a car or like a machine that, I don't know, you will have the feeling that suddenly you can cut the legs, no, and you can carry it to another place. You can, that it was important for us, no, that somehow the idea of how to integrate the building in the site was by a concept of contrast, no, as different as possible. In my opinion, you could integrate better, no? Like you see in this image, the idea also of catching, no, the brightness, the movement of the trees, no, the movement of the trees, the air, the wind. Sorry, so this was the idea of creating this atmosphere, no, so that somehow, we try to do like this, no, and from the interior area, always you have this connection, no. Sometimes the connection is under the building because you are in the lower part of the island, or sometimes it's through the patios, or even over the roof of it, no, somehow. So let's say that it's always the same condition, the same project, but the same project, but the conditions are changing depending on the uses or depending on the orientation. No, you have in a ring, you have all orientations in almost in real time. Of course, suddenly it appeared this opportunity. No, in the beginning they were not asking for, let's say, this kind of open space, no, to walk, no, and to see all the competitions that are going on and all the research are doing here, no. In the lower part where the connections are done through the building, of course, no, where we have to move some earth as less as we could, but to find the right quote of the building, no? And always, even in interior space, it appeared the same. No? The staircase is connecting the roof, and the interior space is a very neutral space used to workshops and to try different techniques and materials, so on, in the lake and in the mountains. No? Okay, well, just an image is how it's used. Sometimes even I think it's interesting because the way they use it, no, they change quite much. Even they are using the geometry of the place, and the geometry of the building is giving another way of use the place. Of course, no, always in this idea with this concept of a new layer that is adding activity and a new opportunity to a territory. No? And that's all. Thank you very much. Please, I'm here to answer as I manage to do it, whatever question or comment you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was really interesting. Really, really interesting.
Thank you very much. I will try to.
Yes, to stop the sharing as you can.
Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. We are perfectly in time. So thank you so much, Professor, for this really, really interesting lecture. I don't know, obviously, I first opened the floor to the discussion. If maybe someone of the students or the colleagues could have some question or consideration about that. Maybe, yes, of course, use the tools as Edgar of the raising hand on Teams. Please, Edgar, you are the first one.
Hi, Professor.
Yeah.
Hi, Edgar.
Very interesting, the presentation. I have one question, like you said before, regarding kind of like the topic we are working with. Let's take as an example your the first project you show and the last one. Of course, they are completely different. One is more like reintegrating the old stuff, and the last one is about a proposal, a new proposal in that different environment. No, so what I want to ask is like, despite the differences of both examples, which one was more, let's say, harder or desafiante to develop? I mean, which part, like the reintegration of an old part with the other in a totally urban area, or in an empty place, the developing of a new building that may have some kind of different changes, no? Which one was like the hardest or the most, I don't remember the word in English, lo más desafiante?
Sí, very, very, very clear question and very interesting question. Like I explained, of course, I mean, for me it was more difficult the first one. I should be honest. I can explain something else, but no. I mean, let's say that this is like, when you are dealing with such of important context, no, and even I was quite well. They were doing both projects almost at the same time, because first it was thought and it was draw, let's say, the temple of Diana, but it took so long until we built it, like 6-7 years until we finished the project. And during that time, we answered in a very fast, quick way to this other kind of sport system, no? The ring. No? So let's say that the first one was more difficult, without any doubt. But we wanted, and that is my what I try to explain. No? We took the same care, of course, to both projects, and I think quite many of the questions that were coming from this idea of reinterpreting to reinterpret the old ancient columns order and the Roman situation we were doing the same, but with the trees themselves. I didn't go deeply in the project, but of course we had to move some trees that were protected, some that were not protected. But of course, to find the position and the right code of the building was something also very complex in the second project. But I also should say that doesn't mean that you should go with in different, like an architect, you should not answer in different way because you are working with a archaeological context, or because you are working with very important also in terms of a very ecological and very, really beautiful nature context. Okay, with it's not. I don't think one situation is more important than the other. I don't say that. I say that for us was more difficult that one, maybe because it was a starting point. But I think also, like architect, we need to approach with as much respect, of course, with not only us, because it's senseless to work now like an architect working by himself. No, we are. I don't explain this because I don't have time, but you can imagine how many people, different teams of different disciplines are involved in a project like this. No? For example, in the first one, it was absolutely important the good relationship we established with the archaeologists. Merida is a very important city, so with es patrimonio de la humanidad. And this was also fundamental, of course. But like an architect, I think we should answer to every context with the same, let's say, responsible position, but with the same clearness. No, I don't think because if we don't work like this in heritage context, that is my opinion. The cities died. We need to use. I think this is already accepted to everyone right now, but we really need to deal with because mainly in Italy sometimes there are situations quite difficult, no, but you have to deal, and we have to use the heritage context and the cities because we need to do it, no. So, in my opinion, well, this is a sample how we did it. I mean, of course, as good as we could, but yeah, I don't know if I answered you, Edgar, but it's a good question. Anyway.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you very much for your explanation, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question or comment from you? Or
Yes.
I have one.
Hello, Professor.
I hear someone.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Are maybe Dennis.
Yes, that's me. Thank you very much, first of all, for presentation. It was really interesting and inspiring projects. I would like to ask you if possible to comment the difference between Swiss and Spanish architecture, since I understood you have two offices, one in Switzerland, one in Spain. So it would be very interesting to hear some comments about the approach or architecture in general. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Well, I mean, I can know more about Spanish architecture, but it's true that from the last days, mainly through the University of Mendrisio, where also Donatella is involved in it. But I've been traveling often to Switzerland and working even there. We are developing right now as a project right there, so we are working in Switzerland. And in my point of view, I should say that really it's quite close in terms of I think in both countries. Well, I should say that in Switzerland maybe exists a kind of respect for architecture, maybe a little more than in Spain. But I'm not so sure if I should say this, no. But I think the way how architects understand the process and the architecture, and this idea also I was planning from by interest, no, of connect so much university practice research. I think is quite similar in Sweden, in Switzerland and in Spain, no. And in my point of view, we talk a quite common language somehow. Then, of course, you have a technology in Switzerland. And also normative, also, but maybe it's more strict. And I mean, you need to also understand in which conditions are you working, no? And that is what right now we are in a small office there working, developing, no? But I don't find so many differences. From my opinion, I'm talking mainly about public. Commissions through competitions. For example, one thing quite good in Switzerland is that the competitions are quite well organized. Usually, this is a bit interesting thing. The competitions are organized by architectural office. The government take an office, and you have, I don't know if in Italy it's like this, in Spain it's not like this at all. So the architecture office organize the competition itself. So somehow it's the competition and the people who's gonna choose their teams and use, they are architects. I think that this is also quite interesting. That, for example, doesn't happen in Spain.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to comment? Or maybe I can, in the meantime, give you an answer, Professor. Since I think also somehow in that relation with impossibility, I spoke at the beginning to find the boundaries between your three components of your work. I mean, the theoretical approach, the academic experience, the working experience. My question is, which kind of relation or even also meanings it is possible to be found not only in the single project, like the 4 projects you explained to us today, but also so in the single idea and work, but also in the sequence of your works, in the total of your professional path somehow. So I don't know.
No, yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I can explain myself, but I don't think it's very interesting for anyone. What I try to explain is that mainly, of course, is advice to the younger, maybe the students who are almost architect or are already architect, they understand what I mean. But that we need to find our own interest. It's so important. We cannot start a competition from zero. We cannot start every project, every morning. We cannot wake up in the morning and say, okay, I am an architect, I have to reinvent myself every morning. I don't believe in that. I don't think we are genius that we can imagine whatever and we can see. We need to have a background and we need to move in those terms or in those situations that maybe life carry you there, or maybe, I mean, your family, maybe someone, we know the architects from the history, who have been a special relationship, for example, with a material, or with a smurfer because they was born in a place like this, or they have a father who was carpenter or was working with stones, or I'm sure everyone knows that. And usually it's not that you choose sometimes, of course, we don't choose our life. So in the same way we don't choose our life, maybe we don't choose our way of understanding life and architecture. No? So what I invite everybody is to try to find your interest. And you are interested in something, really go on it and go on it as much as you really want, because that will allow you to have a critical point of view of some questions and mainly to develop a work in a proper way. Then it's not easy when those boundaries, that I think is something not very common in every professor that I think more or less we are here, that those boundaries are not clear sometimes. So sometimes you start to say, okay, I would make a course maybe in this territory that is very special and I don't know very well, so it's a chance to study deeply, or maybe, I don't know, for example, my doctoral thesis, it was working about, the morning we were talking about it, my Professor Ferrari commented, I was doing a doctoral thesis through the city of Bath, in England. Why? Because suddenly I went there in a trip when I was my first year, teaching, one of my first years teaching in the school of Madrid, and I discovered such a kind of structural, the crescents, all those lineal buildings, and I was in that moment developing the project, Temple of Diana, building the ring, and suddenly it's like a quack. I saw that another architect from 18th century had been thinking or interested in the void in somehow. Well, suddenly I discovered some connections, and that was the beginning of a research so it's more important the research or the building itself, or when something is something where you feel comfortable, or you work depending on the moment, depending of course of your personal situation and so on. But it's a kind of common ground where at least I enjoy it. No? So I invite you to find your own interest and your own ground where to develop like architect, like person.
Thank you so much. I bring it as a personal wish, but I think also, yes, really. And also a wish for all of us. I think it's the perfect way to end this, if there are not any other questions, but so a perfect kind of end to this speed talk and the perfect beginning for these last 2 days of workshop, intensive days of finish this workshop. So I would like to thank you again, Professor, really, for this inspiring lecture. I would like to remind you, all of you, the lecture of tomorrow that will be with Professor Donatella Fioretti at 1:30 with Nicole De Togni introducing her. And I would like to remind you that every evening, more or less, we upload the record of each speed talk in the Meow website, the blog. So every records, also that one from today, will be available this evening for the ones that were not possible to be here today with us. So thank you so much, Professor. And I think have a good work for this at the end of this workshop and in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elena, and good work to everyone. Let's finish.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.